Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi wa kafa. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ibadihi alladhina istafa. Amma ba'd. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. Wahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi zidna ilma, Rabbi zidna ilma, Rabbi zidna ilman nafi'a. Ameen. We are talking about doubt, ashak, as an epistemological principle of knowledge. We have said that doubt as a principle was used by the Western philosophers, and in particular the philosopher René Descartes. But the roots of this method, they are in the ancient Greek skepticism, which was revitalized in the Renaissance of the West. So there are two main strands of skepticism: the ancient Greek skepticism and the Renaissance skepticism. The term Renaissance skepticism refers to a diverse range of approaches to the problem of knowledge that were inspired by the revitalization of ancient Greek skepticism in 15th through 16th century Europe. So skepticism and this method, it is at the root of Western civilization, and they used it as a method of research, understanding, and they were successful in that, as we have discussed. But this skepticism was used in the Renaissance of the West, and the roots of it are in the ancient Greek philosophy. So we have philosophers in the Greek period who also used doubt and skepticism as a methodology to reach certainty. Much like its ancient counterpart, Renaissance skepticism refers to a wide array of epistemological positions rather than a single doctrine or unified school of thought. So they all agree on using doubt and skepticism as a method, but there are different positions and opinions of the philosophers who were involved in the theorization of this mas'ala. So these various positions can be unified. The unifying foundation of these various positions lies in their emphasis on the epistemic limitations of human beings. This is common between them, and they all agree that a human being, he has epistemic limitations, which means ability to acquire knowledge, ability to understand things as they are. That's why they are called skeptics. These various positions in the ancient Greek skepticism, which was revitalized in Renaissance skepticism, they all can be unified to the extent that they share an emphasis on the epistemic limitations of human beings and offer the suspension of judgment as a response to those limits. So they say, well, our senses cannot reach certainty, other forms of knowledge cannot reach certainty. So the response to this problem is we suspend the judgment. That means we can never reach certainty. We try our best to reach the best form of knowledge, but certainty is impossible. But there are some differences between the Renaissance skepticism, yani the doubt and skepticism which was used in the Western Renaissance. We know the Renaissance happened in the 17th century Europe, but its roots lie in the past. This applies to all civilizations. The civilizations which cannot connect with its roots and are not able to cultivate the knowledge of the past, the legacy of the past, they eventually die. These civilizations cannot survive. So the survival of every civilization depends on how can it revitalize, cultivate the legacy of the past, and change it into an important catalyst of movement in the present. So there are some differences. The defining feature of Renaissance skepticism, as opposed to its ancient counterpart, which is Greek skepticism, is that many of its representative figures deployed skeptical strategies in response to religious questions. Okay, so some of them, they used this method to support their religion, Christianity. They used the method of skepticism and doubt in Christian apologetics, in arguing for the Christian beliefs. Okay, so there are some philosophers in the West who used it in a positive way. They said this method is basically proving that a human being has epistemic limitations. We cannot understand things as they are by our senses, by our aql and other means. It means we must look for a better and a certain form of knowledge, or a source of knowledge, which is revelation and religion. So religious knowledge is the most certain form of knowledge which can be achieved. In this way, they used it to support their religion. This is the difference between Renaissance skepticism and the early skepticism. So many of its representative figures, the philosophers, the artists, the experts of literature, they deployed skeptical strategies in response to religious questions, especially dilemmas concerning the criterion of religious truth. Whereas some Renaissance thinkers viewed skepticism as a threat to religious orthodoxy. And in the majority, they thought that skepticism and this method is a threat to the church, to religion. And if we put all thought on the table, we say that every form of thought, opinion, whether religious or non-religious, can be reviewed. Nothing is certain, nothing is final. This will create a threat to religious orthodoxy. So this was the mainstream. But from this mainstream, we have some philosophers who said, no, we can use it in a positive way. We can use it to prove, in fact, we can use it as a support to religion. Others viewed skepticism as a powerful strategy to be adopted in Christian apologetics. Apologetics is the science of argumentation, al-munadhara. So this is the Renaissance skepticism. As we said, this Renaissance skepticism has roots in the ancient Greek skepticism, the Greek period. And you can read about it. You just have to search Renaissance skepticism. You will find a lot of works have been written. There are papers. So about Greek skepticism, we have two main schools of thought. The Academy of Plato, the famous Greek philosopher, and those who affiliated themselves with his academy. They developed the first strands of skepticism. That's why it is called academic skepticism, because it's affiliated with the Academy of Plato. And we have the Pyrrhonian skepticism, which was developed by the philosopher Pyrrho, and those who affiliated themselves with him. These are the two main strands. Remember, as we are mainly talking about our own legacy, Islam and Islamic thought. But to understand things, sometimes we have to take a leap towards the Western thought also. At least we must be acquainted with the basics, basic classifications. So we have in the Greek skepticism, which is the foundation of the modern Western thought in many things, we have two main schools of thought: the Academy of Plato and the philosophers who developed this skepticism and they affiliated themselves with it. It's called academic skepticism, and the Pyrrhonian skepticism. This was developed by the philosopher Pyrrho, who lived in the times of Alexander the Great, as they say. So this is all happening in the 2nd and 3rd century before Christ, BCE. Although all skeptics in some way cast doubt on our ability to gain knowledge of the world, and this is the foundation. The term skeptic actually covers a wide range of attitudes and positions. So there are branches, there are differences of opinion, there are many philosophers involved in that. There are skeptical elements in the views of many Greek philosophers. But the term ancient skeptic is generally applied either to a member of Plato's academy during its skeptical period, which is 273 BCE to 1st century BCE, or to a follower of Pyrrho, which is around 365 to 270 BCE. Pyrrhonian skepticism flourished in the 1st century BCE. And there are many philosophers who are affiliated with these two strands of skeptic thought. And even in the times of Renaissance, the philosophers, they based their understanding of this mas'ala on these two main schools of thought: the academic skepticism and the Pyrrhonian skepticism. Okay, until we reach René Descartes, who becomes the main philosopher to use doubt as a method of reaching certainty. And this is in the Western thought. So we can say we have in the Western thought, we have the Greek skepticism, ancient Greek skepticism, and after that we have the Renaissance skepticism. The Renaissance skepticism, it based its method on the ancient Greek skepticism. The ancient Greek has two main schools of thought. We have the academic we have the academic skepticism and the Pyrrhonian skepticism. Pyrrhonian skepticism. So by academic we mean the Academy of Plato, and by Pyrrhonian we mean the philosopher Pyrrho and the philosophers who affiliated themselves with it, until we reach the times of René Descartes. Inshallah, we'll talk about that. But in today's session, let's continue with our discussion about the doubt in Islamic thought. And we have claimed that it was the Muslims who used doubt as a method in epistemology for the first time, even before the West. So some may disagree with this. They may say, well, ancient Greek, we have skepticism and doubt as a method in ancient Greek period. But even if we take that opinion, it was still underdeveloped. It was not so developed as in the Islamic thought. So we have clear evidences to prove that doubt, and we have talked about the meanings of doubt. Yani we are not taking doubt in its ordinary meaning. We have settled that. We have understood the meanings of doubt. Here we mean doubt as epistemological method. So we have clear evidences to prove that doubt as an epistemological method was used by the Muslim thinkers for the first time. And the first group of scholars or the Muslim thinkers to do that is the sect or the group which we know as Mu'tazila. Mu'tazila. Mu'tazila is a famous school of thought in Islamic theology, Ilm al-Kalam, which flourished in the late Umayyad Khilafah and in the Abbasid Khilafah. It reached its peak. It influenced the politics. It influenced some Khulafa, which is well known, in Basra, in Iraq, Basra and Baghdad. So in the Mu'tazili school of thought, we have these two schools, the school of Basra and the school of Baghdad. They are the first, this is the first school of theology which used doubt as a method in understanding knowledge. And then following them, there are other schools of theology who used the same method. They disagreed with some matters here and there, but they used it. And we have referred to Imam al-Ghazali many times. We'll come to that. Here, some people may ask, why, as Muslims, we have been commanded to follow the correct opinion, or from the sects and groups, we must affiliate ourselves with the saved sect and disassociate ourselves from the deviant groups. Why are we studying about deviant groups like Mu'tazila and others? This is a wrong understanding. Some people think that saved sect or the correct opinion is like a 21st century organization which has an office in a particular place. You just contact them, you fill the form, and you affiliate yourself with them, and then you learn the rules of this organization and you follow it. This is not how we understand this matter. The saved sect or the correct opinion, to reach that, you have to engage in comparative analysis. You have to understand the different opinions of these groups. And this applies to all fields of knowledge. So, for example, in order to reach the correct opinion in Aqidah, you have to study the different schools of thought in Aqidah and extract the correct opinion which is near to Quran and Sunnah. And this involves ijtihad. In order to reach the correct opinion in fiqh, you must study the different opinions in fiqh, different schools of thought, and then you extract the correct opinion or the most preponderant opinion, al-rajih. And this is the peak of scholarship. So correct opinion or the saved sect is not like an organization. You fill the form and you're affiliated with it. For this reason, understanding ikhtilaf, difference of opinion, is very important in all fields of Islamic knowledge. The early scholars from Tabi'een, they would say, من لم يعرف الخلافة لم يشم أنفه الفقه. The one who does not understand difference of opinion, his nose has not even smelled fiqh. Forget about understanding it. Ikhtilaf is very important. Okay, so Mu'tazila is not the mainstream Muslim thought, Ahlus Sunnah. You may consider it a deviant sect, but it does not mean that all their opinions are wrong. We cannot learn anything from them. No scholar says this. In fact, the scholars who are considered very strong in refuting the deviant groups like Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn al-Qayyim, if you study their books, they have mentioned this in many places, that to reach the correct opinion, we have to study. The correct opinion is between these different schools of thought. If you don't know anything, you cannot reach the correct opinion. Okay, so, and there's another important matter which we must understand. Most of these schools of thought, their works have not survived. They have not reached us. So, for example, how do we know the opinions of Mu'tazili scholars? We know it from their opponents. We know it from the works which have been compiled about give me a moment, I'll come back. Give me a moment, please. Assalamu. So how do we know the opinions of Mu'tazila, for example? Their works have not survived, most of it. So we know it from their opponents. And the books which were compiled about comparative theology, about the opinions of the early schools of thought in theology, in Aqidah. So there are many opinions which were wrongly attributed to them. And this applies on other groups also. Because from the objectivity is understanding a particular thought from its original sources. If you understand it from secondary and tertiary sources, you may misunderstand. The person or the scholar you're using to understand a particular school of thought, he may himself have misunderstood or attributed wrong opinions to them. So now in our times, some early main sources have been published. And from that, many things were cleared about Mu'tazila, for example, and other groups. For example, there is a famous misconception about Mu'tazila that they reject the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. They don't accept Hadith. Now, some works in our times were published about Mu'tazila by the Mu'tazili scholars about the sciences of Hadith. And when you study them, you understand that they accepted Hadith. They had some extra conditions, which you may disagree with. So the point is understanding a particular thought from its original sources. And in order to reach the correct opinion, the best opinion, we must study all the schools of thought which we have. And this is applied by others also, like the Western scholars in a particular field of knowledge. They, in order to reach the best opinions, they cultivate the earlier opinions, they cultivate the earlier methodologies. They don't leave anything. They even study the odd opinions which may be rejected by the mainstream. But they do this in order to benefit from everything. This is what we should do also. So the first group of scholars, or the scholars of theology, who use doubt as a method, is Mu'tazila. I want to read from some Mu'tazili scholars about this mas'ala. We have the famous scholar of Arabic literature, Al-Imam Al-Jahid. He died in 255 after Hijrah. Al-Imam Al-Jahid. He died in, this ta is mutawaffa, and this points to the date of death, 255 after Hijrah. Which means he lived in the 3rd century, early Muslim history, Muslim age. And you see, in spite of the fact that the mainstream scholars, they rejected the opinions of Mu'tazila in Ilmul Kalam, they still appreciated their work in literature, for example. I mean, who does not know about the famous tafsir of Imam al-Zamakhshari and its value in understanding the language of the Quran? Imam al-Zamakhshari, rahimahullah. Zamakhshari is a famous Mu'tazili. And Jahid also, his works in Arabic literature are acknowledged by all scholars. Listen to Imam al-Jahith, and then we will move to some of his teachers. Imam al-Jahith, he says in his book Al-Hayawan, فَعْرِفْ مَوَاضِئَ الشَّكِّ. And in explaining the importance of doubt as a method, he says, understand the places of doubt. وَحَالَاتِهَا الْمُوجِبَةِ لَهُ. And the conditions which necessitate doubt. لِتَعْرِفَ بِهَا مَوَاضِئَ الْيَقِينِ وَالْحَالَاتِ الْمُوجِبَةِ لَهُ. So that you understand the places of certainty, or you reach certitude, وَالْحَالَاتِ الْمُوجِبَةِ لَهُ, and the conditions which necessitate certainty. So if you want to reach certainty, you have to understand the places of doubt. You have to understand the probable knowledge. And we talked about the importance of dhann, conjecture, in ijtihad. Whole institution of ijtihad, which is one of the main intellectual institutions or foundations of Islam, which keeps our religion vibrant, is based on dhann, the concept of dhann. So there is no ijtihad in qat'i matters. There is no ijtihad in areas which are certain. There is no ijtihad in texts which carry only one meaning. The only ijtihad in qat'i nusus, qat'i texts, is in application. Okay, so for example, zina is haram. And we have definitive texts for that. There is no ijtihad in that. Salah is obligatory. Zakah is obligatory. Hajj is obligatory. So on and so forth. The whole institution of ijtihad is based on this concept of shak. Okay, so if we as Muslims, we believe that whatever has come in the book of Allah, it is all at the level of qatr, certain knowledge, definitive knowledge, there is no ijtihad. If we believe that all ahadith which have reached us, they are qat'i, and we are talking about dalala, the meanings are qat'i. There is no probability of more than one meaning. There is no ijtihad. But we know this is not the case. And Imam in his book Al-Muwafaqat, he says, he gives a very important principle. I think we have talked about this. He says that about the texts, that the texts which are at the level of nas, yani which carry only one meaning, there is no probability of more than one meaning. Imma nadir aw ma'doom. These texts are either very rare or non-existent. Most of the texts, whether ayah or hadith, they have probability of more than one meaning, which keeps the room of ijtihad open. Okay. So Imam al-Shatibi, rahimahullah, understand the places of shak, doubt, and the conditions which necessitate it, so that you reach the places of yaqeen, certainty, and the conditions which necessitate it. وَتَعَلَّمِ الشَّكَّ فِي الْمَشْكُوكِ فِيهِ تَعَلُّمًا. And learn the areas of doubt according to a proper methodology of learning. Yani learn it. Learn how to doubt. Learn how to reach deep understanding in matters. When you see a tree, don't stop at the appearance of the tree, which has a trunk, it has roots, it has leaves, it gives fruit. Don't stop there. Learn to doubt. Think about the processes which are happening inside the tree. So if we talked about this example, and you can apply it in all matters. Those who discovered photosynthesis and other methods or other important processes in the plants, and they cultivated it in science, if they had stopped at the appearance of the tree and never doubted it, or never tried to reach the deeper meanings or the deeper knowledge, they would have never reached these great scientific methods which are applied in agriculture, in other matters. Same applies on all areas of knowledge. فَلَوْ لَمْ يَكُنْ فِي ذَلِكَ. If in this, yani doubting, understanding doubt, reaching doubt, understanding the conditions which necessitate doubt, and learning how to doubt, if it had only one benefit, it would still be the best. فلو لم يكن في ذلك إلا تعرف التوقف ثم التثبت لقد كان مما يحتاج إليه. If we benefited only in one thing in this method, which is توقف, stopping and doubting our knowledge, ثم التثبت, and learning how to reach better knowledge. And when you study something, you see something, you perceive by your five senses, or you understand by your aql, or any method. You don't consider it final. You don't say, I have reached certain knowledge. There is no deeper knowledge which has missed me. This is certain knowledge. What I have understood about this thing, there is no knowledge beyond it. If this was the only benefit in shak, which means tawaqquf. Tawaqquf means stopping and doubting. See, wallahu a'lam. And we know this tawaqquf is a very important principle in ijtihad. Ijtihad, like the four schools of fiqh and other schools in the branches of aqidah in fiqh, no scholar declares his ijtihad qat'i. He has the right to do ijtihad if he fulfills the condition, mujtahid, and then he presents his ijtihad to the ummah, and after that says, wallahu a'lam. There may be mistakes in my ijtihad. This is what I could do the best. And this will nurture knowledge always. This will create multiplicity of ijtihadat, which will nurture the knowledge, tawaqquf. And we know tawaqquf is a very famous method applied by mujtahideen in areas where adilla are mutasawiyah. Adilla are same on the both sides, on all sides. So they say tawaqquf. We don't have any opinion in this mas'ala until adilla become more clear. Particularly in fiqh, if you study the fiqh, you will see there are many matters in which scholars have applied this method of tawaqquf. So this can be applied in knowledge as a whole. لَقَدْ كَانَ مِمَّا يُحْتَاجُ إِلَيْهِ. If this was the only benefit, at-tawaqquf, stopping, and not considering your knowledge final and certain, ثُمَّ التَّثَبُّتْ, and digging deeper, searching for more knowledge, understanding matters in a deeper way. If this was the only benefit of this methodology of doubt, كَانَ ذَلِكَ مِمَّا يُحْتَاجُ إِلَيْهِ. It would suffice as a thing which is needed. Yani this would be the sufficient benefit. ثُمَّ اعلم, after that understand, أَنَّ الشَّكَّ فِي طَبَقَاتٍ إِنْدَ جَمِيعِهِمْ. The shak, doubt, has different levels according to the scholars. وَلَمْ يُجْمِئُوا عَلَى أَنَّ الْيَقِينَ طَبَقَاتٍ. But they never agreed about certainty in the same way as they agreed about doubt. They agreed that doubt has different levels, but yaqeen does not have different levels. فِي الْقُوَّةِ وَالضَّعْفِ, in strength and weakness. So this is the kalam of an early Mu'tazili talking about doubt from the original source, Al-Hayawan, Al-Imam Al-Jahith. In this work, he has narrated from his teachers also. So we have another great scholar from Mu'tazila, Abu Ishaq al-Nazam. And if you study Usul al-Fiqh, his name appears in the works of Usul, in disagreement with the majority, Nazam. For example, if you study Ijma' in Usul al-Fiqh, you will see Nazam does not believe in Ijma'. As I said, most of these opinions, they are wrongly attributed to the groups. We must go back to the original sources. Sometimes the opinion is correct, but it has been wrongly understood. In the original source, you will find that the scholar has said it in a different way, so on and so forth. Abu Ishaq al-Nazam, he is from the teachers of Mu'tazila in Basra. Nazam. He died in there is disagreement about his date of death. It is between 221 to 229. Let's say 229 after Hijrah. Now listen to Nazam. He says he differentiates between a mulhid, a negator of religion, or an atheist in modern terminology, because ilhad is of different strands and different levels. But ilhad has been translated as atheist in modern terminology. He differentiates between atheist, whose negation of truth is based on doubt, and the atheist who negates because of desire. Okay, because he just wants to negate. He does not want to accept the truth. He differentiates between the two. He says the atheist who has doubts is a genuine atheist. We can engage with him. And an atheist, a mulhid, who rejects truth because of juhud. He knows what is right and wrong, but he still rejects it. So engaging with him is more difficult. So this also emphasizes the importance of doubt. And sometimes even if the doubt is wrongly applied, or a person has a wrong doubt, he is in a better position than a person who rejects truth because of his desires. He knows what is right and wrong, but he doesn't want to accept. We have, I think we talked about the kufr of, the difference between the kufr of Christians and the kufr of the Jews in the Quran. This is the difference, because the kufr of disbelief of Christians was based on doubts. They are in a better position. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called them ad-dallin, misguided. And the kufr of Jews was based on rejection. They understood truth and falsehood, but they still rejected. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called them maghdub alayhim. The wrath of Allah is on them. The anger of Allah is on them. Imam al-Nazam al-Mu'tazili, he says, نازعت من الملحدين الشاك والجاحد. I have argued, or I have had arguments with the mulhideen, because Mu'tazila was the prominent group to refute the mulhideen, the rejectors of Islam and religion, those who criticized Islam. They were the prominent group. They wrote works on that. So he says, نازعت من الملحدين الشاك والجاحد. I have had arguments with the atheists, both the doubters and the rejectors of truth. فوجدت الشكاك أبصر بجوهر الكلام من أصحاب الجهود. So I found the doubters from the atheists, those who had genuine doubts, they have better understanding than the rejectors. In another wording, he says, الشاك أقرب إليك من الجاحد. In argumentation, in arguing and presenting truth to people, the doubter is near to you than the rejecter. A person may understand good and false, right and wrong, truth and falsehood, but he may still reject it because his desires are involved with it. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about Fir'aun and his army, that they accepted the truth, they understood, but they didn't want to accept, they didn't want to obey. Why? Because the desire was involved. Fir'aun did not want to leave his authority. So there is no cure for this disease of desire. There is a cure for doubt, but there is no cure for desires. So sometimes there are two types of people. Those who have genuine doubts, we can clear those doubts. When knowledge and certainty reaches them, they obey, they accept. But there are people who will never accept because they are following their desires. And we also said that the arguments which are presented by people against truth are not always based on knowledge or doubts or genuine doubts. Most of the arguments are nafsiyya, not aqliyya. Remember this. Particularly for du'at, the preachers who are involved in da'wah and discussions, the arguments are of two types. Aqliyya, arguments based on aql. Yani they may be invalid, but they are based on aql. And the arguments were nafsiyya, they are based on nafs. So they are basically khawatir of a person, passing thoughts, cultural baggage, nafs. Invalid arguments, they are not aqliyya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the Fir'aun and his people and army in Surah An-Naml, ayah 14, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وجاحدوا بها وَاسْتَيْقَنَتْهَا أَنفُسُهُمْ ظُلْمًا وَعُلُوًّا فَانظُرْ كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. And they rejected them. Juhud. That's why kufr of juhud is worse than the kufr of doubt. Kufr of shak. And Nadham here, Mu'tazili scholar, has used the same term, al-jahid, the rejecter of truth. Allah says, and they rejected them. Yani they rejected the truth, they rejected Musa alayhi salam, while their inner selves were convinced thereof. Their inner selves accepted the truth. وَاسْتَيْقَنَتْهَا أَنفُسُهُمْ. Yaqeen. Istayqanatha. This verb comes from yaqeen. They were certain about the prophethood of Musa and the truth which he brought. But they rejected it, ظُلْمًا وَعُلُوًّا, out of injustice and haughtiness, arrogance. There is no cure for this disease. فَانظُرْ كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. So see how was the end of the corruptors. Allah called them mufsideen. So Nadham here, he says, الشَّاكُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْكَ مِنَ الْجَاحِدِ. The doubter is near to you than the rejecter. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ يَقِينٌ قَطُّ حَتَّى كَانَ قَبْلَهُ شَكٌّ. Because there is no yaqeen ever. There is no certainty ever except the doubt precedes it. There is always doubt before yaqeen. So you should not blame people who have genuine doubts and they have questions. And Islam promoted this intellectual activity of engaging with the doubts of people and clearing it. Because a person can never reach yaqeen until doubt precedes it. وَلَمْ يَنْتَقِلْ أَحَدٌ مِنْ اعْتِقَادٍ إِلَى اعتقاد غيره حتى يكون بينها حال شك. And no person has ever shifted from one belief to another belief better until there was a doubt between them. So no person will shift from his belief until he starts doubting his belief, and he shifts to another belief which is better. That's why one of the best strategies of da'wah is before you present Islam to people, you create doubts about the belief of that person, whatever he believes in. You start the discussion about that belief. When this person is doubtful about his belief, he will shift to a better belief. There is another Mu'tazili scholar. His name is Amr ibn Ubayd. Amr ibn Ubayd. He's also from the teachers of Mu'tazila and Jahid. He died he's a very early Mu'tazili. He died in 143 or 144. Let's say 144 after Hijrah. A very, very early scholar. He says, تقرير لسان الجاحد أشد من تعريف قلب الجاهل. Making the Jahid, rejecter of truth, understand is more difficult than presenting the truth to the heart of an ignorant who has doubts. Again, the same meaning. There is another Mu'tazili scholar, Ibn Jahm al-Barmaki. He was from the colleagues of Jahid. He says, ما أطمعني في أوبة المتحير. How hopeful I am about a doubter. Yani I am hopeful that a person who has genuine doubts will always accept the truth. لأن كل من اقتطعته عن اليقين الحيرة فضالته التبين. Beautiful statements, yani deep in rhetoric, the balagha, the eloquence of Arabic and meaning. Because لأن كل من اقتطعته عن اليقين الحيرة. Because everyone who is detached or taken away from certainty by doubt, hayra, confusion. فضالته التبين. Tabayyun, genuine yearning of reaching the truth and understanding, clearing his doubt, is his hidden treasure. So anyone who has not reached certainty, he has not understood truth because he is in the condition of hayra, he is in doubt, confusion. This is good. He is not in the condition of rejection, arrogance. He is in a genuine condition, which is he has yearning for. That's why he is doubting. That's why he is in hayra. Hayra means confusion. فَضَالَّةُ التَّبَيُّن. His hidden treasure is tabayyun. Clarity, clearing his doubt. وَمَنْ وَجَدَ ضَالَّتَهُ فَرِحَ بِهَا. And whoever finds his hidden treasure or lost treasure, not hidden treasure, lost treasure, he will be happy with it. And when he finds it, he will attain certainty. This is from the Mu'tazila scholars. From the early philosophers, we have the great Imam Ibn Rushd. The West has benefited from two philosophers a lot, Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd. And they changed, they Latinized their names. Ibn Sina is Avicenna and Ibn Rushd is Averroes. Okay. Now, this is not a secret anymore that Western Renaissance was influenced or benefited a lot from the Muslim scholarship or the Muslim thought. Ibn Rushd is in one of his works explaining Aristotle, because Ibn Rushd, he was a philosopher. He engaged with explaining Aristotle in particular. One of the explanations on Aristotle, he says about a scholar, a genuine scholar in all fields of knowledge. What are his qualities? He says, وَيَطْلُبُ الْأَقَاوِيلَ الْمُثْبَتَ وَالْمُبْتِلَةِ فِي كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. He should understand the opinions for and against in everything. So understanding opinions and thought, which is muthbata, which is positive, does not suffice. If you want to reach proper understanding, you must engage in comparative analysis. You study an opinion and its refutation, both an opinion and its refutation. And after that, yafhas anhu, and then involve in understanding and research. Yafhas, involved in taking the best opinion. Because if you understand an opinion and its evidences without engaging in learning its refutation, you will never be able to reach the weaker points in that particular method or opinion. The weaker points are highlighted in the refutation. So take the both. And this is the importance of criticism in modern Western methodology in all fields of knowledge. Debate, criticism is very important. لأنه إذا لم يتشكك في شيء. Now again he uses the word shak, because if a person, if the scholar does not doubt in a particular thing about which he is learning, لم يعرف مقدار ما حصل له من معرفته بعد الجهل به. He will never understand his level of knowledge in that particular field or about that particular thing after he was ignorant about it. So if he does not doubt a thing, if he does not know the pros and cons of a particular opinion or a school of thought or anything, he will never be able to judge his knowledge after he was ignorant about it. وَلَا مِقْدَارَ مَا ذَهَبَ عَنْهُ مِنْ مَعْرِفَتِهِ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَعْرِفَهُ. And he will never be able to understand his level in that particular field and the knowledge which missed him about that particular school of thought or a thing. Okay, so when this is jahal, ignorance, is the best way of understanding knowledge. So for example, when you study hadith, you study basic books of hadith, 40 hadith, Umdatul Ahkam, Mukhtasar Bukhari, you start thinking that you have become a great muhaddith. But when you reach Fathul Bari of Ibn Hajar, and you see a great ocean in front of you with high waves of knowledge, you start belittling yourself. And this ignorance which you achieve in knowledge is the first step towards knowledge. Because a person who feels satisfied in knowledge, who feels I have become a great scholar, will never work or give efforts to learn more. And if you don't learn more, you will never be able to understand the miqdar, the level, your level in knowledge which you acquired after you were ignorant. This is what Ibn Rushd is saying in explanation of this, of Aristotle. Then we reach another example. These are examples. Imam al-Ghazali. Imam al-Ghazali in the 6th century. He says in Mizan al-Amal, the last paragraph of Mizan al-Amal, I have said, we have spoken about this, that the best thing about Imam al-Ghazali is he has written some great works about methodology of understanding in different areas, focusing on Mizan, the scale of understanding, about Amal, about the Aqli Ulum, and other fields. In the last paragraph of Mizan al-Amal, he says, إِذِ الشُّكُوكُ هِيَ الْمُوصِلَةُ إِلَى الْحَقِّ. The doubts, they take a person to the truth. Doubts are the carriers towards al-haq, the truth. فَمَنْ لَمْ يُشَكِّكْ وَيَشُكَّ لَمْ يَنْظُرْ. Because the one who never doubts or never engages in doubt will never reflect. Because when you think that you have understood a particular thing as it is, you will never try to reflect on the inner realities of that thing. Say again the example of the tree. You see the tree, you see the reality of the tree is what the appearance of the tree. That's it. You will never reflect on the inner realities of the tree. Same applies on physical things, ideologies, schools of thought, in all fields of knowledge. فَمَنْ لَمْ يُشَكِّكْ وَيَشُكْ. The one who never doubts and never engages in doubt will never reflect. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَنْظُرْ. And the one who never reflects, لَمْ يُبْصِرْ. He will never be able to reach knowledge. وَمَنْ لَمْ يُبْصِرْ بَقِيَ فِي الْعَمَى وَالضَّلَالِ. And the one who does not reflect and reach better forms of knowledge, he will always remain in blindness and misguidance. And he will never be able to attain beneficial knowledge. This is from Mizan al-Amal of Imam al-Ghazali. All these quotes from different scholars, early scholars, 2nd and 3rd century till 5th century, they prove that it is the Muslim scholars, particularly the scholars of theology in Islamic thought, who for the first time developed and used doubt as an epistemological methodology in knowledge. And after that, the Western scholars, they picked it from the Muslims, particularly René Descartes. Inshallah, we will reach there. In the next session, we will compare between Ghazali and René Descartes. His book, the main work of René Descartes, and the book of Imam al-Ghazali, Al-Munqidh min al-Dalal, and we will see the similarities. And the Western scholars also had their legacy, the Greek skepticism, the academic skepticism, the Pyrrhonian skepticism, and the philosophers. So they reflected, they developed what became Renaissance skepticism. And as we have said, doubt and skepticism is from the pillars of Western civilization. In modernity, post-modernity, post-postmodernity, this is the foundation. Okay. Of course, it has negatives to it. I'm not going into the details. If you want to study, you can just search Renaissance skepticism or skepticism. There are many books about it. Particularly, how was it used for or against religion? Okay, so this idea of nothing is final, no thought is final, no opinion is final. All opinions must be respected. And this is the famous strategy adopted in our times. It comes from the West. So you may not accept a particular way of life or an opinion. That is fine, but you must respect it. And they connect it with the legal rights for all opinions. Because nothing is final. This is this comes from the skeptical tradition in the Western thought. Okay, so you don't like me, you don't like my opinion, you don't like a particular ideology, fine, that is good, but let's sit on the table and discuss. When you sit on the table, you are acknowledging both sides of the table, basically. Okay, so when you sit on the table, I'm with truth and the other side is with falsehood, you're acknowledging the right of truth to sit on the table and the right of the falsehood to sit on the table. So this is against Islamic teachings. We don't accept falsehood. We don't engage with falsehood. We only reject falsehood. We prove the weakness of falsehood, but we don't engage in falsehood. We don't accept falsehood. Okay? So as Muslims, we believe in certain knowledge. We believe in ultimate truth. So we can say Muslims, they developed a unique form of skepticism. Okay, because Western thought, eventually it reached a time which we are living now, which is the times of skepticism and doubt, doubting everything. There is no ultimate truth. There is no goal in life. There is no ultimate reality, so on and so forth. These are famous, and they applied this in basically when you adopt a particular position in your civilization, it will be manifested in all forms of thought and practice in your civilization. So, for example, in art, in literature, even in aesthetics, the constructions. So, how do you construct your art, the way you construct your structures and buildings depends on what you believe in your civilization. Okay, that's why we have, for example, in Islam, we have calligraphy, we have a certain way of constructing masajid and so on and so forth. But, for example, you just Google post-modernist structures. They will be chaotic. And you see a building, it is chaotic. You will not see harmony from any angle. A chaotic structure because it represents the thought of the modern West. But in Islam, we as Muslims and the Muslim scholars, they adopted both certainty and skepticism at the same time. So skepticism or doubt, in a positive meaning, was limited to a particular area, which we will always remain developing. We believe in progress, development in a particular area. But there is an area which is fixed. Aqidah, basic beliefs, ultimate truth. It will never develop. It will never become something different. So this is how we incorporated both things. We will continue with our discussion, inshallah, in the next sessions. Alhamdulillah, now we have reached the last points about doubt in Islamic thought. In the next session, bi'idhnillah, we will compare between René Descartes and Imam al-Ghazali, and that will be the last mas'ala about doubt as an epistemological principle. And after that, you can study more. We cannot go into all the details. There books have been written, and this masala is still being discussed in the West, in the East, between Muslims. But the purpose is to broaden our canvas here. As Muslims, we must appreciate the legacy we have and learn how to engage with the current times. We must create a harmonious balance between al-asl and al-asr. The legacy, the turath we have, al-asl, the book of Allah, in the form of revelation, the book of Allah and Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And Al-Asr, the requirements of the modern times. Understanding Al-Asr is also important, so that we can deal with it, we can take or reject, guide, whatever. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us understanding. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from doubts and desires. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to elevate the ranks of all scholars till the last day. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by his beautiful names and exalted attributes to cure our sick and to forgive all our dead. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala nabi al-ummi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.